What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. I have Meenu here back today, and we are talking about burnout. This topic came up for both of us, and since I was recently talking about my time in the ER, I wanted to talk about how I had burnout experience in a career, and she was talking about the same thing, and she had posted on Instagram recently that she was experiencing some burnout as well. So this topic is mostly centered around career, but it could be related to life or friendships or whatever you may be having burnout in. So if you think you may be experiencing burnout or you just want to know a little bit more on the topic, this episode is definitely for you. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast and Transcend into Wellness. We have Meenu back today. And to continue on my ER journey that I have been on the past few weeks with my podcast, Reminiscing, Meenu had posted on her Instagram that she had been burnt out recently, and it reminded me of my burnout experience as an ER nurse. So we wanted to talk about just burnout in general, kind of in the workplace. Maybe Meenu has seen this with some clients, and we're going to talk about what burnout is, and then Meenu's going to give us some strategies to kind of get us through it. So,
I'm going to try my best.
well, just as you would coach yourself or you would coach someone else, like how you would coach them through it.
Absolutely.
And I will also say what I did for my burnout. Like we'll kind of give our own opinions on what we can do to reduce that burnout. But I know that we both work in fields that are in high extreme burnout rates. I was just talking to Meenu before we started about the statistics. So Meenu's in the coaching field, I'm in the nursing field, and they're very high burnout rates. So a nurse, it says statistically, is 30 to 60% of nurses burn out, and it's usually dependent on where you're working as a nurse. And the two highest are ER and ICU nurses, because those are very high stress environments and they have higher burnout rates. And then as a coach, it says that is 40 to 60% of mental health professionals experience burnout. And it's because it's high risk specialties, including trauma therapists, which is what Meenu does, crisis counselors, and those working with high need populations, such as veterans, PTSD patients, trauma patients. And then it says the reason why mental health professionals have burnout is because they end up with compassion fatigue, high caseloads, frustrations, and emotional exhaustion from constant exposure to trauma. So,
yes. No, 1000%. You pretty much nailed it. And I was talking to another friend and I was saying, oh, Jonna and I are going to do a podcast of burnout. And then she was like, this is literally the perfect time because I've been burnt out. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So maybe a lot of people in the collective feel burnt out. So we were like, let's just actually talk about it. Because when we talk about it, we normalize it so people don't feel like they're alone experiencing all this.
right.
And we're give some solutions that work for us. So here we go.
All right. So I want to just start out by saying what burnout is. So burnout is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion that often results from prolonged stress. So that is the actual quote unquote definition. And then some signs to kind of watch for both in work and life that would make you, if you're experiencing these, it could be burnout. So if you're like, what is wrong with me? I don't feel like I have a high stress job, but maybe you don't have a super high stress job, but maybe it's moderately stressful, but then you're also a mom and you have to go home and do that. And then you're dealing with marriage stuff. So there are other reasons why you would have burnout, but these are the signs to look for. So physical signs would be chronic fatigue, sleep disturbance, frequent illness, changes in your appetite. So any of those things. So when we're talking about fatigue, you're talking about feeling drained or exhausted. Sleep disturbance can be anything from difficulty falling or staying asleep or sleeping too much. Frequent illnesses such as colds, headaches, muscle tension. So if you're catching a lot of colds, that's usually because your body's under a lot of stress. And then, of course, changes in appetite would be overeating or losing your appetite unexpectedly.
Right, right. I feel I resonate with so many of that. I feel and a lot.
Yeah. And then I'm going to read the emotional, and then let's talk about what we are experiencing ourselves. So the emotional signs could be cynicism or detachment, which means you develop a negative or indifferent outlook toward work or personal responsibilities. You have decreased motivation, which means losing interest in activities you once found fulfilling. difficulty concentrating, struggling to focus or complete tasks, both at work and in everyday life, and feelings of inefficiency, feeling like you're not accomplishing enough no matter how hard you try. So to me, when I was experiencing my burnout, it was more emotional, some
Mm-hmm.
physical, but more emotional.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's
And then there's the behavioral signs. I forgot to read that to y'all. Withdrawal. So pulling away with from social interactions or hobbies, and then increased irritability, having a shorter temper, and feeling more frustrated or overwhelmed. That was me all the way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that if you're experiencing any of those, would or could be burnouts from either your job or life.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And I feel like for me, it's mostly, physically getting burnt out usually doesn't happen to me because I work out, but I do like moderate exercises. I don't do heavy, intense workouts. So that's not a possibility for me. But because of the line of work that I'm in, I am listening to people. I'm a life coach specialized in trauma coaching. So I listen to people talk about traumas, overcoming, even though I give them tools and methods to like overcome their traumas. And even though they feel so much better towards the end of the session, and that's very rewarding, in spite of that, I feel like sometimes I get burned out and I get ambitious sometimes because I'm like, oh, look at these other people. Like I know a therapist friend who like sees 7 clients a day, and I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
7 a day. And maybe I should like extend it because I see like three is my sweet spot. If I do four, I'm like pushing it. Five, it's like, oh my God, I'm definitely burnt out, right? So I started pushing my limits. Obviously, comparison kicks in, and you're like, if they're doing it, we can do it. So I started pushing the limits a little bit, and God, not for me. And then I later discovered that that therapist only works 2 days a week. I didn't know that.
So in comparison, yeah, you're seeing the same amount of patients. You're just doing it in five and she's doing it in two. So
Exactly.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So it's
comparison is the thief of joy.
100% it is the thief of joy. And for me, like I'm 95, let me put it this way, 95% of the time, I'm highly, highly self-aware. So, but when I'm coaching, like when I'm actually talking to a client, I really literally have the best time of my life. Like I'm actually doing something I really, really enjoy. So I never saw burnout as something as a precaution that could happen to me because I'm like, I thought burnout only happened when people were exhausted, probably didn't feel aligned with what
Didn't
they
love
did,
their job. Yeah.
didn't love their job. That used to be my perception, but then I love what I do, so I'm like I never saw myself feeling just burnt out. And for me, it came in the form of like I can't get out. I can't do anything. It's like scrolling
Right.
TikTok was not feeling like a burnout, but talking to anybody, not just like
Right.
anybody, felt like it was a lot.
And I can relate to you in a lot of ways. Like, no, I don't give people advice per se, but when like I worked in the ER working in trauma because it was physical trauma that I was seeing, but it was also emotional trauma. Like you have to deal with the families of a loved one who had just passed away and stuff like that. So in the moment, like of course I loved what I did. And in the moment I was able to do my job just like you are able to still give advice. You're still able to like coach people through their trauma in the moment. But when you leave, you don't realize how much that took from you that day. And
Ah.
it's not that you don't like it's obviously you're listening to trauma all day long. Like one would think, which we don't, because number one, we're both type A.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know. Are you type A?
I don't know. I feel like I switch.
I
Ask
know,
me
because like sometimes I'm like, you're type A, and then sometimes I'm like, you're not.
if I'm being really transparent, women, you know this. I think it's mostly women listening to this. In my follicular phase and my ovulation phase, I'm type A. In my luteal phase and menstrual phase, I'm type B.
Well, because I was just sitting here thinking, I was like, I'm type A all the way. Like anyone who knows me knows I am very high strung and I want things in a particular order. I should have been an engineer or a mathematician because I am very stringent and nurses typically aren't. Nurses are very like all over the place. I'm very like, no, I like order, I like paperwork. That's probably
Mhm.
one of the reasons why my job drives me insane. But just listening to trauma all day, like, and I don't, do you do 8 hours a day?
So I work from 11 to 7. So I would say,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of sort of 11 to 7. Yeah.
Then I was doing 13 hours.
Hmm.
So by the end of so I tried to get all three of my shifts in a row. So like just doing 13 hours, 3 days in a row, get it over with, and then have 4 days off. On that first day off, and I'm sure a lot of nurses can relate to this, don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't text me, don't call me. Like I cannot have the bandwidth. It's literally, I am a slob kebab on the couch watching reality TV that doesn't take any mental clarity to even think about because I can't even form a thought for a TV show.
No, I totally agree. Like sometimes, like I have like a good social group in Nashville, and sometimes they're like, "Oh, let's have a game night," and I'm like, the first question I ask my friends is it brainless? Because if it's brainless, I'm down. If I have to use my brain, because I do that all day, I don't. I'm not right now. Like another
Right.
time.
Right. No, I can relate to that a lot. And I know a lot of my nursing friends that, I worked with in the ER. It was a lot of that. And it's more because I can't speak for your career, but ours was very fast paced, which I
Mm,
like because my ADHD, I don't know if I'm ADD or ADHD, but anyways, my brain focuses that way. Like I need the shifts throughout the
mm,
day. But
mhm.
then at the end of it, when I'm driving home, like you're exhausted when it's like no music can play on the way home.
Oh my God, that is classic exhaustion.
Yeah, and then like sitting in the car in the garage, even though I don't have children, which I heard a joke on TikTok the other day, it was hilarious. It was this woman, she's a mom. She was like, if you have kids, she was like, you don't know parenting until you sit in the car saying, I'm not going in that house.
Oh yeah, that's so interesting. I don't have children, but I sit in the car all the
I
time.
do. I sit in the car and I'm just like, let me just get the capacity to get in this house because once I get in this house, I know I have more to do. I think that's
Right.
what it is. Like it's like that whole like there's more to do once I walk in this house, like cleaning, cooking, doing all the things despite not having a family. So it's
Mhm.
just sitting in the car, just be like, okay, I can sit here and for this moment in time, I have nothing to do, nowhere to be.
Right, right. No, that's actually really, honestly, very priceless. Like that moment, and then, when I go to bed, like in the night, like when I'm alone, that moment, like nobody to say anything, nobody to disturb me, priceless. It's
Right.
just, oh, so good, so good. And for me, like I've realized that I feel more emotional burnout, like I feel physical burnout. And this is on the days even when I do like a lot of workout. I can still come back home and I can meal prep and I can clean and I can do all these things and I'm still okay. But something about holding a conversation after a long day, that for me seems more impossible than doing physical stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Well, so yes, I think it is because like when I think like sometimes I'm like maybe I should have just done something that with manual labor. Like I
Hmm.
think I was like maybe I should have went into construction instead
Oh
of like
God.
because I feel like and I again nobody judge me for saying this, but sometimes I'm like sometimes I feel like manual labor would be easier. It's almost like when I say it's hard like when we talk about abuse, when it's talking about physical versus emotional abuse, physical abuse sometimes is easier to get over,
Mm.
like quicker to like I'm not saying it's again, I don't want anyone to come after me. I'm not saying like it's easier to get over. I'm just saying like you recognize it, right? Like it's there, you have a bruise, you recognize it, you're like, okay, never again, moving on.
Yeah,
And
and
then
you
when
also recognize that it's very toxic. Like it's
right,
just
like easier.
such a big no. It's such a big, it's so taboo. It's so no. Like, you're like, absolutely, they crossed the line that I could never imagine. So there's like, I feel like there's faster closure sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I'm
But,
trying to say.
but with emotional abuse, the closure is not there, especially if your self-worth is attacked and you don't have a sense of self. Oh my God, it's
And it's
that.
slow, like it's kind of leaks in slowly over time and you don't recognize it. And I guess that's why I'm trying to like use an example where people would be like, so like I think about like physical labor versus emotional labor. Like you
Mhm,
don't recognize it. And then it
mhm,
happens slowly over time when it's that emotional. Like you don't recognize the signs. Like I didn't recognize sitting in the car was something that maybe I should be paying attention to. I didn't recognize that sitting on the couch, for
mhm,
24 hours after
mhm,
my shifts in the ER was something I probably should have paid attention to. Like,
mhm.
oh, you don't want to listen to music? Probably should pay attention to that. And so I didn't recognize the signs kind of, and so like I would like physical labor. Like if you're out on a job physically laboring and all of a sudden you feel sharp pain in your back, you know to
Mhm.
stop.
Mm. That's actually really true. You'll take a break, you'll stretch your body, you'll go drink some water. Like, I don't think they teach anything like that or to pick up cues for like emotional burnout. Like,
Right.
so I just, yeah, it's just amazing how, not amazing, but like crazy. You can call it amazing, whoever's type A. But for me, I think the burnout and normalizing burnout and being okay with burnout, it's also highly cultural sometimes.
Yes.
I really do feel like Here, people are always like, do more, do more, do more, do more. Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop. Go bigger. Aim for the stars. And on one side, for ambitious people, like I'm definitely very ambitious, and I know you're ambitious. Like for ambitious people, it's like amazing, right? It's like, oh, we have a society that like helps us, step into our power and keep going. But at the same time, when you have burnout, then you fall into judgments like I used to do a lot, which is like, oh, look at her doing more. Like, I can do that. I should be able to do that. But then we don't take into account each person's emotional capacity is different. The energy level is different. Their bandwidth is different. For example, people that are used to listening to trauma and used to listening to negative stuff all the time may probably have more bandwidth than I do.
Yeah. And so like to add to that, like, gosh, I have one of those brain moments where it just like literally left me. I hate when I do that. It will come back to me. But I was looking up the like typical burnout statistics in nursing versus mental health professionals. And so like a typical career of an ER nurse is which what I did. The average nursing career length is 5 to 10 years, and mine was 11 years. My thought just came back to me. I knew it would.
Yeah.
So I'll finish this statistic and then I'll bring it up. So 5 to 10 years for an ER nurse before burnout or transition to a different role. So I was there 11 years. And then of course the pandemic happened, and that was what did it for me. Like that took it over the top.
Mm.
And then for healthcare professionals, it says a typical career length is 10 to 20 years before burnout starts. But
Mhm.
it says some do leave within the 5 to 10 years due to emotional exhaustion.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, makes so
And
much sense.
it says, for example, trauma therapist.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like for me, I think I realized that I get burnt out emotionally very quickly when I literally told all my friends, like besties, close friends, all inner circle, that I will not be taking any phone calls. Like they can text me, they can send me a voice note. I may respond right away if I see the phone. I won't if I don't. And it's nothing against you, but please don't call me. Unless
Right,
it's a
right.
true emergency. Please don't call me.
But I think I still have, like I was talking on previous podcasts, like sometimes like I'm watching this show called The Pit right now, and it's like probably the most realistic medical show I've seen. And Meenu, I have not told you this story yet, and I already know what you're gonna say, but I was like, because I said it on the podcast, and I was like, I was sitting there eating breakfast,
Mhm.
watching these people do what they do on this show. And all of a sudden, like it's nothing traumatic happening, nothing sad or anything, tears streaming down the face for no
Yeah.
reason. And I was
Mhm.
like, this has to be PTSD, right? I'm about to start crying now. And I don't know why. Like, I guess we don't know how much we go through until you're trying to look at it from a third lens. And
Oh
so, my
God.
thought earlier, what I was going to say is like with burnout for me and how I started to finally recognize it, which I was irritable all the time, which is not typical of my personality. People would say if they worked with me, oh, that's just her. She's irritable all the time. But that
Mhm.
wasn't who I was. That's not my personality. I don't like being irritable, but I was irritable constantly. And so
Mhm.
I started to lose compassion for my patients because I would be like, I was just so overworked. And it was
Exactly.
just like during COVID, it came to the point where it was just like, I don't, and I said this on previous podcasts, and I said, I know this is bad to say as a nurse, but it got to the point where I was like, I don't care why you're here. I just want to go home. I just want to go home because I ended up getting sick. I ended up with COVID. And then you can imagine me trying to be sick to try to take care of someone else. And like, you have to leave everything at the door. And maybe I just had a fight with a friend. Maybe I'm going through an illness. And then I have to go into work and put on this face, leave everything at the door and
Mhm.
still do my best. And that's when I knew, okay, you are burnout. It's time to
Mhm.
step away because when you start losing compassion for patients,
Mhm.
you have to recognize that. You have to be like, okay, I still love my patients. I still love what I do, but I need to take a break.
If you're a podcast host or someone wanting to be interviewed on podcasts as a guest, visit podmatch.com. Podmatch automatically connects ideal podcast guests and hosts together for interviews. We always say it works just like a dating app, but instead of connecting you for dates, it connects you for podcast interviews. Podmatch has connected over 85,000 guests and hosts together for interviews that listeners love, all while saving you countless hours of administrative work through built-in automations. If you're ready to level up your podcast interviews on either side of the mic, start today by visiting podmatch.com.
No, that is like very spot on. Like that is a very harsh realization
And
that
it's
you
hard to
have.
say that.
It's hard. It is hard. But thank you for being transparent because I feel like people need to hear that.
And I don't know why I'm feeling like I'm gonna cry, but like it's hard to say that out loud as a nurse because people look at you and they think like
Hmm.
you should care. And I do care. It's not that I don't care, but it's like, what they say about anything like in an airplane, when you're in an airplane and they give you the safety directions when you're on there, they say, put your oxygen mask on first.
Exactly. That's
Like,
so true. That's so true. And you get that, and I get it in a different way where people are like, oh, you run your business, from Zoom. Like you see clients on Zoom. Sometimes you have like in person. Like, how can you get tired? It's not like you're waking up at 5 a.m. and you're not driving to work and you're not packing lunches for five kids.
mhm.
Why, a lot of people have made some comments, but what they don't understand is I'm holding space for a like very turbulent experience that happens
Right.
in
You
this.
you don't have a moment to zone out. You can't do that.
I don't, and I think Jonna knows this. Like I have VIP clients in like certain containers who have access to me Monday to Friday, and it's unlimited access.
Hmm.
So that means when shit hits the fan, sorry to use all these words, but when shit really hits the fan, I'm there. I'm there. I'm wearing my hat, I'm wearing my shoes, I'm like ready to like coach them, help them come out of it, give them a different perspective. So my brain is 24/7 working.
And
Sometimes
it's not just one client.
it's
You have
not just,
multiple.
I have multiple. I've done a good job in not taking more than five at a time, especially the VIP clients. Like I cannot because I used to do like 11 and
Oh, girl.
insane. Like, oh my God, it was, and I was holding space for everyone, but then I ended up feeling really exhausted, couldn't go meet my friends, couldn't socialize, like I couldn't meal prep, like I just didn't do anything.
Right, right. You start losing the thing like, and that's something like, and again, like we don't pay attention to it. I always like to try to find examples in my life or something that someone can relate to. Like,
Mhm.
because when it's happening to you, you
Yeah.
don't really recognize stuff. Like, for instance, when I started having thyroid problems, looking back, knowing what I know now, and looking back, like I was experiencing symptoms for a long time. Like
Mhm.
I would post on Facebook, this was way before Instagram. I would post on Facebook like a clump of my hair that had fallen out in the shower and be like, should I be concerned that I can make a wig with the hair? Like laughing about it. But
Oh,
in reality, it was a symptom of hypothyroidism and I wasn't even paying attention to it.
right, right, right,
And so
right.
I think that we don't, as humans, typically pay attention to our own symptoms
No,
sometimes.
1000%. And I think it's also because like I said again, like I said before, I'm saying it again, which is like being in certain cultures and being in certain environments, you know, you do work yourself up to a point of burnout because that is when you get the raise, that is when you get the promotion, that is when you get, oh, out of boy, like you did it. Like that is when you get appreciation so much. So you think that that's normal. And you also think it's normal because somebody else is doing it. And so you
Mhm.
think you can do it. So it's just never ever the case. And I feel like burnout is very subjective to each individual, and I have to,
Right.
like, just because somebody is doing that doesn't mean you should, and you can. And this is the thing, even if you can, doesn't mean you should.
So I clearly have not lived in any other country, but you have. You've lived in several. So when you compare the different, because I know we're talking about like cultural, like sometimes it is a cultural thing. Like, and I know America, that's what we talk about all the time. We talk about like pushing work as long as you can, work 12 hours, 13, 14, 16, get the job done, show your boss you're great. And for women, I feel like we try to prove ourselves more
Or
in
yeah. Hmm.
in like the business aspect of it. So you living in other cultures and other countries, would you say it is predominantly an American culture thing, or have you seen it elsewhere?
So let me put it this way. Asian cultures, like, oh my God, I don't think they know when to pause. I don't think they understand the concept of boundaries. Like I worked
Okay.
in India, sometimes my boss will just be like, oh, can you get this done? And I'll be like, it's the weekend.
Gosh.
Like it's the weekend. You're giving me something to do in the weekend. It's like having zero compassion. And in Asian cultures, I know that it's really, really, really bad. However, However, I did live in Mexico City for 2.5 years, and I really like their culture. Like, for example, they would take 2 hour lunch breaks,
I
2 hours.
was about to say that kind of sounds like, and again, I'm just assuming off a TV show like Emily in Paris, love the show, and it's about a
Oh,
European
yeah. Yeah.
culture.
I've seen it.
And so when she moved from Chicago to Paris and they were taking like 4 hour lunches, she was like, "What? And you're drinking at what? What?" And they didn't go to work till like 10 a.m. and she showed up at like 7 and she was like, "What is?" And they were like, "You need to relax."
Yeah, you need to know, like, literally. And she'll be like, oh, I've already thought of like all this game plan for this event. And her boss will be like, wait, 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 slow down. We have
Yeah,
to
it's
first talk
it's
about
10
it.
a.m. Calm down.
Exactly. Like, no, that I just feel that so much because, like, obviously, the hyper independent culture, overachieving culture, and going from here to European cultures, it's way different. And I have like this friend in Germany. She only works 5 hours a day.
Really,
5 hours. 5 hours.
really.
They don't care when you clock in and clock out. They don't care when she clocks in. They're just like, You're delivering it. That's enough. I don't care if you come in. I don't care if you clock in." And I'm just like, oh my God, that's amazing. And when I'm talking about Mexico, I did notice there that, they do work a lot, but they take so many breaks. So I'm like, if I took that many breaks, it makes me question if I would be actually.
Right. Oh my gosh. So it is a societal thing. Like it's this pressure of performing at a
Mhm,
1000% all the
mhm.
time. And I've said this so many times, and I look again, I know I referenced in the past three podcasts about the pit, but like talking about medical care, like this doctor like talked to another doctor. They called her I'm about to do spoiler alert. They called her slow mo because she would only want to see like two patients or three patients every couple hours or whatever in an ER, which is not usually acceptable, right? And he
Mhm.
was like, well, if you want to go that slow, you need to consider internal medicine where you can have the time and stuff because that's not what the ER. He was like, why are you so scared to see more patients? Because you're a great doctor. And she was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to mess up. And he was
Mhm.
like, I hate to tell you this, but you're a human. You're not a robot, even in medicine. And it sometimes is fatal and it's sad and it's atrocious. He said, but that's the reality of it. He was like, you're a human being, you're not a robot. And I was just like, when he said that, I was just like, ding, ding, ding. Like, because we're
Yeah.
expected to operate as robots, never make a mistake, which again, I understand that it's someone's life that we're messing with and you do not want to make a mistake. And it's not that it's an intentional mistake.
Mhm.
Sometimes, unfortunately,
Mhm.
things fall through the cracks and it's very unfortunate when it's a human life,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
No,
I mean,
I.
like, speaking from mental health professionals, you could, for example, you could miss someone trying to tell you that they want to go home and kill themselves. Like
Oh, yeah,
it could be one little thing that you don't pay attention to, you miss, and that is very unfortunate.
it
But
is.
again, when you're working that, like when you're pushing the limits
Mhm.
that much, it's
Mhm.
hard to know. And again, I'm not saying it should be acceptable. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like people forget people in healthcare professional, mental health professionals as well, that we are human at the end of the day.
Yes.
And I think people forget that like it, and I understand why there's higher pressure there. So please do not take that. I'm not saying that I understand that, but I think people forget that we also are humans that have baggage, that have families, that have emotional disturbances ourselves.
Yes, that's actually a very fair point. The last one that you said, it's like, when we're holding space for like other people, I mean, the truth is, like, I'm just saying from our perspective, guys, like, don't come at us for this,
Yeah.
right? The truth is, we're dealing with a lot of shit. We're dealing
Right.
with life stuff. We're dealing with, relationships. We're dealing with friendships. We're dealing with social stuff. We're dealing with health stuff. Like, we are actively, even though we're professionals, we are having a life. We are in our own shadows. We are actually feeling it, dealing with it,
Yeah.
moving through it, and holding space for everyone else. Not that I'm complaining. I absolutely love what I do.
Yeah.
You love what you do. But I'm just saying, please don't put us on a pedestal. Please don't do that. We're not perfect. And I tell my clients all the time, like, if I make a mistake, if I say something that is offensive, that doesn't land for you, I want you to tell me that. I want you to
Right.
just let's speak. We're equals. I'm not better than you. Like, yeah, I have more experience doing this. I've done it for 10 years, but I'm bound to make mistakes. I'm not AI, I'm not.
Right, right. And I agree with that. And like just like you said, like to just give an example of like a 13-hour shift in the ER, which is why I love this show because it goes hour by hour for each episode. It doesn't just switch to another day.
Yeah.
Like so many things happen in that 13 hours. Like I remember because we're an adult ER and there's a pediatric ER in our town. Well, we got a pediatric trauma that
Mm,
ended up passing away, which pediatric traumas are harder to like accept and move on. So like think about that. If that's the first thing you see in the first hour of your shift, but yet you still have to put on a brave face and move on and emotionally detach from it to take care
mhm.
of someone else, that is hard.
That is hard.
And so when you go home and you yell at your husband or you kick the trash can or you whatever, it's not you.
It's not, yeah.
And that's
It's
what it's,
really
I think it's really hard. And like I've heard therapists tell me before, like it's really hard for ER nurses or trauma nurses in relationships or marriage because people just can't understand like turning it off and turning it on. And for
mm,
example, one of my very best friends, like she had a hard time, like because my personalities, I know we've talked about this on a previous podcast, like my personalities ended up merging at
mhm.
some point, like
Yes.
because it was hard to like turn it off and turn it on. And then my friend's father-in-law came into the ER and he was very, very sick. And I came in very like abrupt and very, you're going to do this, go do that, go do this, like this. And then she pulled me aside and was just like, I've never understood your personality until this moment. And she was like, I'm just very thankful for it.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
it took her seeing like what I do. And like that really, and I'm getting emotional because that really meant a lot to me because we used to fight a lot about how she didn't feel like I was showing emotion or I wasn't as emotional as I should be, or maybe as compassionate as I should be in my personal life. She was like, leave that at work. And I was like, I don't think you understand that I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, but yeah, so like ended up burned out. So for me, she ended up burned out. It took me 11 years to reach that point of like, okay, I need to try something different. And then I went into another role where I was just seeing like office patients. And then I finally like landed in a role where it's like it's very rewarding now. I just see 6 patients max a day.
Yeah.
And I work with veterans. So it's just very rewarding to like be able to relate to them in some type of way because when I tell them I was an ER nurse, they're like, oh, you get it. That's what they
Yeah.
tell me. They literally go, "Oh, you get it," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah." Like I can relate to them in a way of like this fast paced society of get over it, move on.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Mm-hmm.
a very rewarding job now. It's slower. I have more chart reviews than I do like patients,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed that break. But don't get me wrong, I miss the ER a lot. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that's how I ended up having to realize and recognize was the compassion. And then I was like, okay, let's take a break from it. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day I'll go back because I do miss it a lot. But when you made your post the other day, what were you thinking like when you realized like, holy shit, I'm burnt out?
I just started, first of all, I didn't feel like getting up. So I was like, wait, this isn't happening. Like, and, I open about it. Like I have like hypothyroid stuff, but I knew that it was not that though. I knew
Yeah.
that. I was like, something is really off. Like, I don't feel like getting out of bed. Like, and I'm not depressed. I don't have anxiety. So why do I feel like getting out of bed?
Yeah.
And,
Like
and
brushing your hair is a chore.
everything, everything was a chore. And I'll tell you, for me, what happened is I took 2 weeks off to go to Dubai. And I was very conscious of wanting to be present in my vacation. So I was like, I'm not going to do social media stuff. So I've already arranged and scheduled the podcast, social media when I was away. So I didn't do anything. I was fully present. So I thought, oh, Dubai is going to recharge me.
Which, by
So
the
why?
way, gorgeous trip. Pictures you posted, gorgeous trip.
I thought I was going to feel very recharged when I come back to United States. But what actually happened was it did recharge me, but then the journey of flight, which was like 29 hours, it ended up draining me a lot. And then I came back and I thought I would be recharged and I started seeing more clients. And then I realized I couldn't. I just physically, emotionally couldn't. And I had some clients that were very emotional about the fact that I went for 2 weeks and I came back and they didn't have support, which is totally understandable, right?
Mhm.
So imagine like logging in on Zoom and that person is, crying for 45 minutes on
Right.
and about something. And then, like you say you have like a poker face at work or you're like you have a straight face because you have to. I'm like that too. Like
Yeah.
when my client is crying, I'm not hugging them, I'm not comforting them, I'm not doing, I'm holding space for them to cry. And sometimes it comes across as cold, because I'm not being there in a way that a friend is there. But
But
that
you're
is for,
not a friend.
I'm not a friend. And that is also for a very good reason,
You
right?
have
That
to have those boundaries.
I have to have those boundaries. If I don't have the boundaries and I'm saying, oh my God, you're crying, like, what can I do? Like, how can I make it better? If I do that, I'm going to be taking on those problems 90%.
But then isn't that crossing like a patient coaching like barrier because then you become too emotionally involved and then you can't give a third party opinion?
Oh, 1000%. But you will actually be surprised. I've seen people do that.
Really?
I've seen life coaches. Oh my God, this is very disturbing. Me and my friend were talking about it one day. I went to this event and this coach started crying when the speaker started crying. Like they're conveying their problem to the coach, and this coach is crying with them. And
Interesting.
I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Where's your sense of boundaries? Like, you're supposed to be that strong space for them, not cry with them. Like, now
Right.
now you're making it even worse for them. Now you're validating their pain 10 times more. Like you got to detach.
Like, I know
Like,
you say you're not a therapist, but like, I equate y'all in my mind the same because I feel like what you do, if anyone's never, I mean, I'm not saying all life coaches are the same because they're not, but I can talk about you because I've experienced your coaching. And to
mhm,
me, it is very therapy like. Like, I feel like you hold yourself to that high standard of like boundaries and like keeping it professional, not
mhm,
like a friendship. And I feel like when it is that mental health space, that's what you need because even as friends, like close friends, sometimes we can't give that objective advice because we're so close to it. Like
yeah,
we can't, like we're like, I'm on your side. Yes, divorce him, whatever. But like from a friend that, is not like a really, really close friend, we can be like, actually, I think you're being a little emotional here because it's that third party perspective, if you will. Like you're not emotionally attached to it. So like
right.
even anytime I've ever went to a therapist, the first thing they tell me is that they say, hey, I'm not your friend. If you see
Hmm.
me out in public, I won't wave, so don't be offended. They
Hmm.
say all that. And I feel like you kind of held yourself in that same regard. And that's
Hmm.
why I equate y'all two to the same thing in my mind, because
Hmm.
you always held yourself that way.
No, 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 absolutely. I do, but sometimes it's like I do end up having client friends like you. Like we weren't friends before we started working
Yeah.
together. But after we started working together, we did become friends. But like when we were working together, there were, boundaries that you acknowledged
Right.
and I acknowledged. Like we both acknowledged that. So
Right.
I think that's just like really important, and not boundaries with other people. And I think this is where I'm coming to it, which is boundaries with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
in order to prevent the burnout. Because if you're overextending yourself all the time, and maybe that's like giving you the validation that you're a good person. So
Right.
you're like putting yourself there, you're always doing things for other people because you're kind and you're good. You're not really doing a service to the collective. You're not really helping them.
Right. No, I agree. And I was getting there like I have a part-time job and I was giving out my phone number to like patients' families and stuff. So like I'm getting texts at like 9, 10 o'clock at night. And my friend who works with me, she was like, why are you doing that? She was like, there is a boundary. Like she
Yeah.
was like, does your doctor give you his phone number? And I was like,
Yeah. No,
no.
absolutely. I like fully agree with that. And I generally like, even with my clients, like I know they know this and I love them dearly. I'll always tell them, like, please never ever call me. Like, there is an emergency, you want to book a session, you want to talk about something, send me a text or send me an email. And then, we can appropriately discuss what it is. But, calling, it's like, and I just want to understand like how this works, right? Because for me, it's like when somebody calls me, they're demanding for my time. Doesn't that feel like that
No,
for
no,
you?
no. I think that we're very similar personalities. So like I think from my PTSD moments, I think that like when people call me now, like the last guy that I had dated, like he wanted to talk on the phone and like I was like that like I remember vividly the first time he called me, I was like, "Why are you calling me?" And he was like, "Okay." And I was just like, "What? Like what?" What do we need to talk about? Is it not something you can just text me? I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah. No, I mean, that real estate, no, me and my best friend have these like nick words, nicknames, whatever. We call it real estate. That real estate for people to call me, it's very, very like three or four people. My
Yeah,
entire
my
life.
aunt, like I talk to my aunt probably 3 times a week on the phone. We'll have an hour to 2 hour conversations, but she
Right,
also lives far away from me. And like
right,
sometimes like she has to give me like life advice. And so like
right.
that's not a quick text messaging conversation,
Right.
you
So
know.
and I think for me to answer your question, because I was like, oh, I went and I recharged, so I have all this like energy. So let me overdo it and let me try to compensate. And then that like really that slapped me in my face because my body was like, this is not how we roll. You're not used to this. What are you doing?
Right.
Like we don't see 4 or 5 people a day. What are you doing? Like
And so that's so true. Like there's also this saying in America, you probably heard this, is you need a vacation from your vacation. And that's probably where you were at
yeah.
because what we do is we work up until our vacation and we actually a lot of times overwork before the vacation to catch
What I
up.
did. I was literally up till 12 a.m. every single day so that I don't miss a week of podcast. I don't miss social media.
Yep.
And you know what happened? You know what happened? Guess what happened? I missed 2 weeks after
Yep.
coming back.
Yep.
Even though I never wanted to miss a day, I never wanted to miss a week. I do 2 episodes a week, and I missed 2 whole weeks because you know what? I physically could not.
And I used to do that. Like when in the ER, so like I didn't have a lot of time off because I did like this MP plus program. So I would stack my days. I would work 6 in a row so that I
Mhm,
could have 7 off. And then I would have to then work 3 in a row, one off, 3 in a row again, which would kill me. And I
mhm,
was like, why do we do this? We do it to ourselves.
mhm,
No one else is doing it. We are. Because
mhm,
there is no one else. If you take a time to yourself, like I finally started realizing that, like I was like, you know what? Do they think about me when I'm at home if I call out and I'm sick? Does the
mm.
world keep moving? Does the
Yeah.
world keep going? Do people stop and think, oh my gosh, Jonna's not here. She's not running around. She's not doing all the things that I want her to do. No, no
Mhm,
one's thinking that.
mhm.
We
No,
think that.
no one is thinking that. And, I was actually talking to one of my friends and I almost had this guilt. Like, I was like, oh my God, I'm going for 2 weeks. Like, what about my clients? And then my friend was like, you're allowed to have a vacation, right? I mean, it's like, it really like for mental health professionals, it's just, the people that you work with, especially closely, it's like they're always orbiting in your mind.
Hmm.
You like it or not, it's orbiting. It's like, boop, boop, these 5 people, they're always here. You know? So, I love it, but at the same time, I also need to have boundaries so that I can be a better coach, so that I can show up better for those 5 VIP clients and the others, right? So, like for me, I feel like people need to take into account that emotional labor can be draining.
I think it's more draining than physical.
Mm.
Well, not more. It's different. It's
It's
just
different.
different. It's just
It's
very different. Like and I can relate to that because when I was a nurse in the ER, like I'm not saying it wasn't a mental exhaustion because it was, but it was more laborious because you were doing more of the running back and forth, taking patients upstairs, doing all the tasks, right? And when I
Mhm,
switched to being a nurse practitioner in the ER, it was
mhm.
really hard for me to accept that I wasn't doing the labor. Very hard to accept. But I was taking on more mental exhaustion.
Oh yeah.
But I was always like the first probably 6 months of
Mhm,
the transition, I was like, I'm not doing anything for the patient
mhm,
because I
mhm,
wasn't starting their IV. I wasn't taking them upstairs. I wasn't going and getting the supplies. I wasn't going and grabbing their meds. I
mhm,
wasn't performing the CPR. I was like, I'm not doing anything for this patient. Even though
mhm.
I was listening to them, I was writing orders for them, I was getting everything initiated.
Right, right. No, I like completely understand. And sometimes I see people with my clients, as an example, I see people that are like high working individuals, like high performing individuals, and then they go to motherhood and they feel like they aren't doing anything.
Right, right,
And I'm like, you're a mother.
right.
You're doing more. Oh my God. Like you're probably overworked right now than what you did in your
Do
job.
you know something I actually heard today? It was on a podcast that the 8 hour workday was created for when we had someone at home prepping meals for us.
Oh my God. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does because when you think about it, like that was created way back when women stayed home. They did they were mothers, they did cook, they did the laundry. That is a full-time job. And
It's
I
the full
think
time.
people forget that. Like, we're not mothers. I have no desire to be a mother because of that, because my
Exactly.
career is my child.
Exactly. That's so true. I feel like we're so similar. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was
It's
literally telling my friend that my business is my baby. Like it's, you know.
So I do have some tips that I looked up for like to try to prevent burnout. So if like you're experiencing these, or maybe you are going into the professions that we're in, or maybe just like you said, a high working job that could potentially lead to burnout, then
Mhm.
here's some suggestions or tips to try to maybe prevent it.
Mhm.
Number one, control your workload. So if you can, set limits on hours and patient loads when possible. So that's what you're doing now. You're setting that boundary.
Oh, I'm definitely doing that. And what I've also started doing is like spacing out my sessions, like 1 to 2 p.m. I have a session. I don't see anybody till 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Giving yourself some
that's been,
time.
oh yeah, that's been nice. It's not enough, but it's still better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then diversifying your work if you can. So, like for a nurse, that they gave examples of like mixing clinical work with either consulting, reviewing charts, or teaching. And that's kind of what I did. Like, I transitioned from patient to now I see patients, but I'm also doing clinical review or chart reviews, clinical reviews. So it was like a mix of things. So I'm still working 8 hours a day, but it's not the same thing all day
Mm.
long. So like usually about the time I'm getting tired of reading a chart, I have a patient. And then usually, and then it's vice versa.
Right, right,
So,
right.
and then it says to delegate work when possible, if you can. So, like, I know you work for yourself, so you delegate to yourself. So,
Delegate to myself. I'll just be like, I'll do it Saturday.
the second tip would be to prioritize recovery and self care. So, taking breaks, schedule
Mhm.
your vacations, even short ones. Do not work before, after, during.
Yep.
Maintaining a healthy routine. So,
Mhm.
try to get consistent sleep, exercise, and nutrition if that's what you're into. And then
Yep.
practice self stress relief like meditation, journaling, hobbies, or time outdoors. So basically, don't give up the things you love to be this work all the time person.
No, absolutely. And I like preach meditation so much to my clients, not because, oh, I'm Zen and, like I like to do it every day. Sometimes I just don't feel like doing it, but I do it because that is the way I pour into my cup. Like if my cup isn't full, how am I supposed to like show up for my clients?
Right. I agree. I mean, because we work in a medical professional, we're medical professionals, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So like we kind of have similar reasonings to do what we do. The third tip is to establish boundaries, which is what I never was good at, but I'm trying to work on in this new job. So it
Mhm.
says leave work at work. If
Mhm.
you can, like some people are on call, but like if you can leave work at work, like
Mhm.
you were saying, like there should be a time frame with your client so that you can leave that work at work.
Yep.
Try to mentally and emotionally detach after your shift. So I know for you, you meditate in between to kind of get rid of that energy.
Yes, and also another very quick thing that I like to say, I've said this to a lot of people and it's been very helpful. Like if you're like listening to this and you have a desk job or you're working in an environment which is like confined or whatever, a good break for you, meditation is one, but another really good break for you is to like step outside and go for a quick walk, even if it's just for 10 minutes, because getting fresh air and changing the environment is so helpful for
I've
you
started
to
doing that at this new job.
that's amazing. It's
Mhm.
so helpful to like completely tune up your energy and then come back.
Yeah, like when I can tell that I'm getting like tired of like reading a chart or something, if it's very long, I'll get up and go take a couple of laps outside. I'll grab my book, read a chapter, just do something that I'm not over stressing myself about. Finish that.
Yes, absolutely.
It says limit emotional overload, especially if you're dealing with trauma.
Hmm.
Sometimes I don't know how you can limit that, but I guess try to find ways, like you were saying, like take a walk.
Yeah, take a walk, and the way I limit it for me is I'll be like, if I don't limit, then I can't show up for them in a way that they actually deserve. So
Mhm.
that is a very good reason for me to like, have boundaries, take care of myself, show up in an authentic way. Because this is the thing, like, believe it or not, like people like you, people like me, we're under the radar.
Yeah,
Right? It's like people, even though we don't want to be put on a pedestal, people do look up to us in like certain ways.
yeah.
If I don't have boundaries, what am I teaching my clients? I'm teaching my clients that they don't need to have boundaries.
No, I agree. I agree. And it's hard when people are like, I remember, like when I was doing nutrition coaching, like it was very hard if I wanted to go out and just be like, you know what, I'm not going to eat healthy today. It was
Mm,
hard to do that sometimes because it's like people are watching. Like
right.
I'm supposed to be the example.
Right. 1000%. And so, like, I mean, believe it or not, like, there's a lot of pressure for us guys. Like, it's like
It
we got
is.
we got to really walk the walk because, and it's clearly taught us a lot of things, and we're very grateful for the whole experience. But sometimes walking the walk is hard.
It is. It is. It says to just say no, learn to say no, don't take on extra work out of guilt, which I was
Yeah.
very guilty of. Like, I know when my boss would come to me when I worked in the ER and they were like, hey, we're super short staffed tomorrow. Can you please pick up extra days? I would always say yes, even though I knew I was
Mhm.
so tired and exhausted and I didn't have anything left to give. I would be like, yes,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
I was trying not to be selfish. I think it comes down like I was trying not to be selfish. Like, going back, I know this is way past, but like something I should have recognized for me being burnout
Mhm.
was I couldn't even rest without feeling guilty. I couldn't lay on the couch without feeling this overwhelm of I'm being lazy. I should be up working. People need me.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that's a sign too. Like if you can't sit down and rest and you have to constantly be doing something, cleaning, working, cooking, talking,
Yeah,
that
I
is
do
a
that
sign
a
of
lot.
burnout.
Oh my God, I do that a lot. I do that. Like, my friends tease me. Like, they'll come over for like dinner and I'll just be doing the dishes. I'll clean the counter.
Hmm.
They'll be like, can you please sit down? Like, I just want you to like sit down.
Yeah, and they say that's like a stress response, like if you can't just sit and be,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which I mean it is.
It is. And that's why I meditate because I force myself to sit and be. And that helps me recharge. And I don't know if I told you this, but I'm actually going on a silent retreat
Oh, fun.
for 4 days, the end of this month, to recharge myself because all we're going to be doing is eating amazing food, doing yoga, meditating for 3, 4 hours a day, talking to teachers. Like, we can't talk to each other because it's a silent retreat. You can't use your phones.
Oh
So
my
you
gosh, I cannot wait for you to do that and come back and tell us all about it.
out as a clean slate. Like,
Yeah.
I'm actually going to record a whole podcast about this because it's
Yes.
my fourth time in the silent retreat.
I think I would probably go nuts, but I would love to try it. It would be a challenge.
Actually, you know what I think will happen? I think day one will be like so challenging. And then day two, I think you'll secretly start liking it. And day three, you're going to get hooked. And that's what happened to me. Day four, I don't want to come back. Like, I was like,
Yeah.
live like this. This is,
The fourth tip is to consider career adjustment. So
Mm,
shift to lower intensity roles, like changing what you do, and that's what I did. Try to increase your autonomy. Like maybe like this is talking about medical. It's just giving me examples. So like if you're working for someone else, try to go into private practice. Kind of like if you were working for a company, you went into private practice.
mm.
Um, and then pursue projects. So something that you're passionate about that you can actually take control over that's going to take your mind off of the trauma.
Yes.
And
And
then
I'm sorry to interrupt, but one thing I will say real quickly is when you go into passion projects and when you open those creative juices, it is a form of stress release.
yes, yes, I agree because it enhances your dopamine and then you're actually focusing on something outside of work. And
Exactly.
sometimes it will take you from work because you need that attention there.
Exactly.
And then the last one, it says obviously seek support. So connect with your peers who understand your stress, go to therapy or coaching for personal resilience, and then mentorship. Mentoring others can reduce burnout by shifting your focus from stress to growth.
Right. No, absolutely. Like, I've had some regular clients for like 3 years now. They don't have anything to work on, but they just need like a reset every week. So they'll come and they'll talk about, their accomplishments and some mindset shifts, and we'll talk about it. And they'll be like, oh my God, I feel so energized for the next week. Like, sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
Somebody to listen and look at your blind spots, because you can look at your own blind spots and tell you where you can like improve your life. And that's something that you really need. So I love what you just summarized. I think it's like all of that hit the nail on the wall.
Well, and I'm trying to be better with my friends. I'm not quite there yet, but like I know I'm quick to like if a friend comes to me to and I can tell they're venting,
Mhm.
but they're also asking rhetorical question. Not is it rhetorical questions where you don't answer back? Is that what's the question
Sure.
that
Yes,
there?
it is
Anyways, guys,
rhetorical. Yeah,
I was
rhetorical
like,
questions
there's a
are,
question that you don't answer back.
yep.
Um, when they're asking me questions that I know I'm not supposed to answer, but then I start giving advice and then I have to catch myself because sometimes I'm like, I'm giving advice and I don't think that's what they want. I think they want to vent. And then I'm sitting here trying to fix it or change their mind. And they're like, no, and it's making them more agitated.
It is. And I used to do that. Oh my God. I used to give free advice and then I realized I was burning out and it's
Yeah.
probably not even serving them. So at this point, I've learned to develop this habit of asking, is there anything I can do? And if there is nothing, then there's nothing, then I'm just holding space for you to vent or you to say whatever you want because there's nothing I can do and you don't want me to do anything, you
My
know?
aunt's really good because we've gotten in some tiffs or whatever because like I'm just venting and she'll be like, trying to give me advice. I'm like, I don't want your advice right now. Like, can you just listen to me? And she'll be like, so she's gotten really good at being like, when I start on a tangent, she'll be like, okay, I just need to know, are you venting or do you need my advice right now? Like, I need to know which way this conversation, because she said, I can listen. She's
Yeah.
like, but she says, John, I'm a lot like you. Like, I like to fix problems. She was like, so
Right.
if you don't want me telling you that you're wrong in this moment, let me know first before you get mad that I tell you that you're wrong.
Right. And guys, I just want to like emphasize this because burnouts can happen in friendships too. And it's like
Yeah.
just to conclude this episode, I want to really talk about this. It's happened to me a few times where I used to have, these friends that would just call and talk about the same shit, like the same thing, the same problem, the same thing. And I would have given them so much advice, which would have totally changed the trajectory of their mindset and their lives. And they didn't take it because they just want to keep talking about it. They just want to vent. They just want to vent, right? So have discernment. I'm not saying, you don't even have to hold space for venting. If you cannot do that, you don't have to do that. You don't have to listen.
Yeah.
You can be honest and you can say, you know what, I'm going through some stuff. How about we reconnect next week? And I will have some bandwidth for you. You're also allowed to do that. You
I
don't
love
have
that.
to hold space. You don't have to always be there, whether you give advice or not. You don't have to.
And I can say this because I used to be one of those friends that would vent about the same thing over and over. And like I couldn't understand why my friends would be like, oh my gosh, this is like year 10. Why are you still talking about the same thing? But now like I have a friend that's kind of going through the same thing and now I get it. Cause you know how they say that you don't really know something until you experience it yourself. So like
Mhm.
now I'm kind of going through that with a friend and I'm like, okay. I was like, now I'm calling my friends and apologizing because the saying of what you're not changing, you're choosing is so true.
And 1000%. There was like 2 months ago, this friend was like continuing to like talk about the same thing. And I just told her, I just asked her a question. I said, do you want to be happy? And then there was like this huge silence. And then she was like, I think so. I said, I don't think you do.
Hmm.
I think you need to sit with that.
Yeah.
You don't have to answer me right away. Like sit with that and ask, do you actually
It's
want
so
to?
funny that you said that because my aunt will do the same thing. She'll go, I don't want you to answer this right now, but I want you to think about this question. And I'm like, and then I know she's getting real serious. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah, and it's just, it is just what it is. So, like I said, you're not obligated to answer phones, you're not obligated to answer texts, you're not obligated to be there for people. You're not obligated to show up when you don't have anything to give, you don't have anything to pour. And, like I've started doing this with certain people. I'll even like tell them if I cannot respond, I'll just tell them, I will respond to you shortly.
hmm
I cannot respond now,
right.
right? And because it's when you text someone, when you call someone, you are asking for their time.
Yeah.
Are.
And then the last thing I'll say is like, just try to recognize the signs of burnout before you get fully burnt out so that you can maybe take corrective action.
Right.
And just remember, like the example I gave, you have to put your oxygen mask on first before you can take care of anyone else. You have to feed yourself first before you can feed anyone else. Because if you're not at your best, there is
Mhm.
no way you're giving your best to someone else.
Exactly. And also remember that no matter how you are, whether you decide to show up in your fullest or not, people are moving on. The world is moving on. People are doing their stuff. They can exist without you. As brutal and harsh as it sounds, it's very true.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much, Meenu, for doing this podcast with me. It's always a pleasure.
It's always fun. Thank you so much.
And guys, don't add us. We're not trying to offend anybody. We're just speaking from personal experience. Maybe you're in the nursing or mental health professional field and you're not experiencing this, and that is 1000% wonderful. And I'm happy for you. This is just from our own personal experience, as always.
Yes. And thank
Until
you.
next time.
Yes. Until next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.